folks who just had to listen to me in the breakout room. I'm Jessica David. I am the co-founder and president of two organizations that are relevant for this conversation. Local Return, a nonprofit organization that focuses on building community wealth in neighborhoods that have experienced historic disinvestment over generations in Rhode Island, and the Rhode Island Community Investment Cooperative, which is a public benefit corporation acting like a cooperative that we created to house the Local Return Diversified Community Investment Fund, which I think, along with my fellow panelists, is one of the first in the country. So I think the way I want to answer this question is to talk first about why Local Return was created. And it really came together in the early days of COVID with a focus on community place-based inequality. So my background, I spent 13 years at the Rhode Island Foundation. It's a community foundation with an endowment over $1 billion. I left there really after having what I call a bit of a values crisis around philanthropy, and the way that we try to finance and fund change in this country, and feeling like these things that I had really poured my heart into were fundamentally flawed and actually perpetuating a lot of the things we were trying to reverse. I have been part of, I don't know how many initiatives that come into a neighborhood and say, bring all the stakeholders together. We're going to create a coalition and a table. We're going to have a table and an umbrella. And we're going to bring multi-year funding. It's always 3 years. And then it's going to sustain itself after that. And we're going to transform this neighborhood. And I have been part of so many of these initiatives, all very well-meaning and so thoughtfully conceived, and just utterly did not make a difference in terms of outcomes. Whether we looked at health outcomes, employment outcomes, involvement with the criminal justice system, any educational outcomes, any map you looked at, it was the same neighborhoods that always showed up in red. Not surprisingly, these were neighborhoods that had the highest percentage of people of color. They were the neighborhoods that had the highest percentage of low-income residents, and they were really just bear the brunt of so many flaws in the way our systems have been built. And so we got together and said, the way we're doing this isn't working. We need to find different ways of investing into place and really addressing these inequities that exist on a place level, so that two children who live a couple blocks apart are not facing dramatically different life trajectories simply based on zip code, which side of the street their house is on, or which neighborhood it happens to fall in. So that is why Local Return exists, and the two strategies we wanted to focus on from the beginning were community ownership and community investment. That led us very quickly into a shared community investment fund. It led us to NC3 and many of the wonderful people you've heard talk about today. We landed on the diversified community investment fund model because it made sense to us. It really fit our place-based focus. Every neighborhood that I'm talking about has at least one, if not multiple, of those properties or spaces where capital hasn't come at all, or it's come in a bad way, or somebody from out of state is just sitting on this property, or it's an empty space. And so the DCIF model just really resonated with us. It also was a lot less crowded of a space in Rhode Island, to be honest with you. There wasn't anyone. All of the real estate financing that happens in Rhode Island is the kind that Dan put up on the slide today, with really federal money coming in, and it's 9 layers deep. And we saw our fund as being able to bring money where it wasn't flowing, even in a dysfunctional way on its own. And we like to talk about it as possibility capital, so bringing money to make things possible that otherwise wouldn't be possible without this fund. So I think I'll stop there and pass on.
Hi, testing, there it is, all right. My name is David Palmer. I run a small consultancy called Key Partners based in the city of Detroit. And I do management consulting for nonprofits and philanthropy that are trying to answer really big, bold questions that don't have obvious answers. So this journey that I'm working on right now started in 2020 when I was all sad in pandemic days saying, oh, now you're voluntold to be unemployed, what are you gonna do? I had the audacious question of how many first-time home buyers are there in the city of Detroit, and are we meeting the basic market demand for homes amongst my neighbors? A really long process later, and a phone call from my congresswoman to another secretary at HUD, and magically all the data shows up that wasn't available under my FOIA request. And it turns out that about 1,500 humans a year go through homebuyer education courses in the city of Detroit, and less than 20% of them report buying a home. I'm like, oh, well, that's awkward. But before we could even get to that, we had to map all the transactional data from the assessor's office for over a decade. And when we matched that to mortgage origination data and all the other fun layers that we added in, we said, oh, 2/3 of the city of Detroit had no functioning mortgage marketplace as of 2018. Even if you presented as a white guy with a beard, you're probably not getting a mortgage in the city of Detroit. In a community that is between 72 and 86% people of color, depending on whose number set you're using. Right? So if the marketplace doesn't even function at a baseline, then how the heck are you going to originate new construction loans? Because a mortgage is a pretty white bread transaction in every community surrounding Detroit, except in the city, right? So the folks that I was working with at the University of Michigan and my side, formerly Southwest Solutions. So my side is one of the larger homebuyer education providers in the city, and we all know UMich. They do stuff just like MSU does here at scale, right? So we're going through all this data and saying, why doesn't this work? Because the neighborhood that we're focused on in Southwest Detroit is about 1.3 square miles with a larger 140 square miles that is the city. And the 9 vacant lots that we just got an option to purchase after 10 months of conversation with the quasi-governmental Detroit Land Bank Authority, those properties have been vacant since 1977. Those properties were torn down after white people got subsidized to move to the suburbs by the federal government in the second tranche of the GI Bill, right? So the residents that live in this neighborhood, in many cases, are legacy Detroiters and new Detroiters. Legacy Detroiters are often African American, and they tell me the stories about how they bought the house of a nice Jewish family that was moving to Melvindale or Allen Park or Ferndale or wherever the heck it is they were moving with federal subsidies, right? FHA loans. We all know those now, but back when those were becoming popular, it was a way to segregate communities as a point of practical purpose. So 30% of the land in this 1.3 square miles is owned by a quasi-public entity that is supposed to be helping to repopulate that land in the hands of Detroiters. But it's almost impossible to work with them. And even if you can't get a mortgage, how the heck are you going to get new construction financing? Well, you go to your CDFI and they're happy to give you 12 to 15 points on new construction financing. So if you want to build a workforce attainable community at between 80 and 100 per people, 20% of area median income, where do you find capital? And the nonprofit contacted me and said, hey, will you help us build a community investment trust so that we can originate new financing for new construction? And I said, well, what's a community investment trust? You tell me. Like, could you help us understand what a community investment trust is so that we can do this thing? And I quickly learned CIT is an interesting model, but not the right one for what we needed here. I called Chris Miller, who I've known for a long time, and said, hey, Chris, I need a grid of all the investment fund vehicles that allow non-accredited investors to be the owners of the fund, because I'm not doing something unless the community owns this thing, right? So we're about ready to stand up after almost 2 years of paying lawyers, thank you, Brian and friends, and consultants, thank you, Kathleen and friends, and Rachel and all the other folks in the crowd that are helping us stand up. What does it look like to do a marketing campaign to a neighborhood to make them Class A shareholders in a community investment vehicle, just so we can do the audacious thing of originating new construction for single-family homes in a neighborhood that has long since been divested by the name brand financial institutions you all work with or are part of. or bank with, that awkward silence is what the financial industry is in the city of Detroit, right? And it's St. Louis, it's Baltimore, it's other cities, but I think Detroit is the academic case study for what economic apartheid looks like in the United States, right? So breaking that down is a part of how you begin building, and that's what this conversation is about.
Thank you, Angela. Thanks, Catherine and Chris and the NC3 team. It's an honor to be here with you all. My name is Derek Shields. I'm with Investment. I see nobody gave that name there. Our community is at the northernmost tip of the Mid. So I'm in the Charlevoix counties. So from East Jordan up to the Mackinac Bridge. And I reside in Petoskey. Petoskey is the county seat of Emmett County. And we are about 6,000 population strong. So we are very rural and comparatively a very small rural community. Our economy up there is largely tourism based, and our year-round residents up there have for many generations shared their area with seasonal residents and tourists who come to enjoy the beauty of the North Country and the high quality of life. Those seasonal residents have brought with them a large source of wealth, monetary wealth, and generosity. As with anywhere, that also means there's inequality. The most recent figures for our area is about 26% of our community is at the ALICE level, the asset limited income constrained unemployed level. And we are a community that likes to get involved, whether that be at a local charity or a local club or even local government. So the city of Petoskey still has more conventions and elections where most small communities have gone to at large for all the seats. Because again, we're a community that is involved and active in that community. So we take pride in our quality of life and the livability of our area. That livability is being severely challenged by the housing crisis. And clearly we're not unique in that. But there are no more starter homes in Petoskey. So I moved to Petoskey 11 years ago to work for a nonprofit land conservancy, where I still work today. And if that move would have been in 2024, last year, I would not be able to live in this city. I would have not then run forward and been elected to city council, where I currently serve. We are missing out on so much potential when people can't move or stay in their community. So that was, it is my motivator for coming to the investment table, and it is what brought a lot of us who are involved in investment together. It's something around the housing crisis, and that has been the primary motivator for investment. But so is creating opportunities for people to have a say in how their community develops. As a city council member, I hear a lot of people bemoan development happening to them, and they have no say. Investment is about changing that. As I said, people in Petoskey and the greater Petoskey area like to help out, and investment exists to give people the involvement in a community, to help them, so people can help their community grow, and be healthy and resilient. Our governance model is, so we're a nonprofit, and our governance model is a one member, one vote. So we are looking to be membership based. I say everything is also, we're incorporated, we're a nonprofit, we do not have a fund yet. I say anything is, we're building there. We are motivated by the idea of people having influence and control, just as we are also motivated by for people to be able to align their money with their values. The idea of taking Wall Street and turning money towards to Main Street. And so we'll wrap up by saying the focus of our fund is on being a part of preserving and creating housing in our two-county area.
each touched upon really where you are in the early days of the life cycle of the fund. And I think many people in the room can appreciate that we're in startup mode on community investment funds in this country. And so I wonder, based on what you've experienced so far, what is one pearl of wisdom and a call to action, which I didn't prep you all for, but what is your pearl of wisdom, what is your call to action that you would share with every other startup fund in the room and every other would-be startup fund manager in the room?
You're starting with me.
I'll start with you.
Oh boy, okay. I, of course, did a terrible job of telling you about the focus and the way the fund is set up in my first question, because I got so excited talking about the why. But I think my wisdom offering relates to that, which is I think there can be a real opportunity with this work to think about it as a financial transaction, as a financial structure, as a sort of offshoot of the traditional status quo systems that we have. And there have been times where I've talked about our work that way, but I really would encourage folks to lean into the paradigm shifting nature of community investment, which is why you're all here. I know, I'm preaching to the choir. But this is about breaking those systems that David talked about. It is about the community control and decision making and autonomy that Garrett talked about. And it is about the awkward pause that we all had. That I would argue is not just Detroit and other cities, but is every place in the United States that has been shaped in this way by the financial system we have. So my wisdom offering or encouragement, which is also a little bit of a call to action, is really to lean into the awkward pause and to the paradigm shifting. My other, I guess, call to action is I think, like NC3, I want to see these funds happen everywhere. And every community has its own community investment fund. And I think it's really hard. It's expensive. It takes the years of legal help and consultant help. It takes your time and energy and effort. And so my call to action is really, at the same time that we're doing this work at the local level, we have to change the national systems to make it easier, because otherwise we're not really going to be able to make it like forever this room, because only so many of us are going to take this on at this level. So that's my plea to NC3 and to everyone here, is that we have to be able to do both, because we've done a good job working, and some people have done a brilliant job working around this system, but it's time to also change the system underlying it.
So Angela kicked us off with, I think, an important story where I see a dot that needs to be connected. So if there's wisdom to be extracted in this moment, it's that Angela was just in a room with people that manage trillions and trillions of dollars of your money, right? So every person in this room that has a retirement account is currently almost exclusively invested through Wall Street. Mm-hmm. And when you have Wall Street as the key point, how are y'all going to get together and compete against algorithms and oligarchs? The answer is you don't. The game isn't designed for you to be successful. You're designed to be a sidecar to the system that's running it. So, hey, Chris Miller, what's that Senate bill number? 115. Senate bill 115 is the thing that makes the room Angela just came from matter to that class. Because if every CPA in the state of Michigan needed to figure out how to get their client that had net worth worthy of putting $6,000 into a thing to get a $3,000 tax gift, which is basically what this bill does, allows people to invest to get a 50% tax refund from the state of Michigan and carry forward if you don't have that $3,000 liabilities. When those investment advisors and those CPAs say, oh, there's a new thing, it's $3 grand, it's a drop in the bucket for you, but I'm charged with making sure that you get every bit of water out of the rag that we're squeezing that's called the tax system. So when all of a sudden you have folks, upper middle, and investor class, oligarchs, say this needs to be mixed in. Now all of these CPAs and investment advisors, where do I find a Michigan-based business to put $6,000? Right? So that bill creates an ecosystem that allows for the evolution of a secondary trading market for locally based businesses. And eventually, before I cash out of this work, I want to be able to have a mutual fund of Michigan-based businesses, ideally in the community that I'm living in, that I can put dollars into, because I divested from Wall Street when I started my own company in 2019. Cashed out a retirement fund, which is, you did what? I needed independence from the board of directors of the nonprofit organization that was leading political interests in workforce and economic development, which I was very good at raising money for. You know, I put in $50 million worth of dollars into the system, funding Michigan Works agencies and community colleges to train people how to do stuff. And they have jobs for it. But that political process is not responsive to the communities that we're actually working with, right? So if there's one thing that you do today, damn it, call your state senator in whatever state you're from and say, go get Michigan Senate Bill 115 and make it happen. Because none of the things we're working on are going to get catalyzed until the dollars realign with self-interest.
Yeah.
Right? So on the investment fund side and the community side, quickly, how we make the fund owned by the community is we set up kind of a weird conversation with Brian. Initially, we were starting with, so we need to form an LLC, we need numbers, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, it turns out LLCs are a really terrible way to engage with community members, because if you get the IRS return saying that you have a tax liability for something you didn't actually make money on for in real time, and that impacts your ability to meet basic standards for maybe a bridge card, so SNAP EBT in the state, or your heating bill is offset because you meet an income threshold, and if you're getting this tax return as a member of an LLC, it may not work. So we developed a regular white bread corporation that shockingly has a social purpose, right? So Class A shareholders are geofence to the community that we're focused on. Lowest Biden, highest potential return. Class B shareholders are everybody else in the city of Detroit, next highest buy-in, et cetera. And then the state of Michigan. And we're using the Mile Act there because I love you all from everywhere else in the country. We'll give you an opportunity soon, but we need to make sure this thing is owned locally in our state, in our community, before I do a Reg CF raise to invite our dollars to come home. That's it.
So we're doing community organizing, we're grassroots level, and so a lot of patients through those ebbs and walls and perseverance. One nugget, just as I was thinking about our process, is how to strike that balance between just trudging forward when you don't have all the answers versus getting all the answers first and making sure you're secure before you move forward. So thinking about how you figure that out. It's a constant thing for us. So quick example, there were times when we did just move forward and we didn't have the full answers, and it paid off. One example is when we were this is kind of year forward in, we're just kind of cycling those same things. We had a group member say, let's just incorporate as a nonprofit. We weren't fully decided yet on that structure. But what that did is that forced us to then start writing bylaws, which should help us clarify the what and who of what we are. And it gave us a little bit more, so we would talk about squishiness for 5 years, it helped us firm out that squishiness just a little bit more. And help us, Kathleen last session said, people need to know you're real. So it gave us a step towards the realness. So that moving forward was good, but I'm also glad that we haven't rushed the process. Maybe 5 years of my life, maybe I decided to be quicker, but that now that we have a grant, so we just received a grant 2 weeks ago, yay. Now we have to deliver. And so we have some responsibilities that we perform. So having the deliberations that we've had for the last 5 years gives me confidence in that. And the people we spoke to, the professionals, NC3, Catholic Law, and the leaders in our community that we've reached out to and spent the time with, that is giving me more confidence in moving forward. So how do you strike that balance? If you are the one spearheading it and you identify as the Dan said the oblivious type, or the build it as you fly type, or if you are the one who plan every detail and then pick up the tool type, match yourself up with someone who's the opposite. And so Scott Smith, my co-conspirator, we match well, and I think that's helped in part of our success. And I won't identify who's the oblivious one.
I really appreciate hearing from all three of you. I'm sure everyone in this room does, and I really want you all to remember them, because they're going to be the stories that we're going to hear 2, 3, 5 years from now, that were the trailblazers that started in this movement. And I'm sure there are several more in this room that just weren't able to be on stage. But these are the stories to track. And if I can leave you with one call to action, the tax incentive legislation at the state level is also being mirrored at the federal level. So I'm on the board of the Crowdfunding Professionals Association, and we socialized this legislation last October before the elections and got incredibly positive reception with the key voices that needed to hear it in Congress and the Senate. And we're going to be going back again this October to advocate again. And so if there is anyone in the room who is a policy wonk and wants to advocate at the state or the federal level, just know that this is a broad conversation, and it's one of many tools that can be used to shift the conversation in the tax offices, in the attorney's offices, in the financial advising offices, where these decisions are being made about what we're all doing with our dollars. So thank you, everybody, and thank you for being here. Please enjoy your lunch.